Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
This episode is brought to you by Latin Excellence. Visit latinexcellence.com. That's Latinx, CELLENCE.com or latinxmovement.com to learn more and shop our merchandise. You are excellence. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Louis, and I'm your host. Today's episode is going to be an amazing one. I'm speaking to Louis Barajas. He is the first certified financial planner of Latino descent, author of several books, an entrepreneur, owns several businesses, most recently International Private Wealth Advisors. He's a CEO and founder. He grew up in East Los Angeles to Mexican immigrant parents, and he's passionate about making people get empowered to make important financial decisions, especially the way he got started with the unbanked Latino community. So he's seen the deficiency in the community and just tries to help out everybody, which has a unique experience because he works with people that are, multi-millionaire entertainers to your average couple, in his neighborhood, so just amazing. I want to introduce you to him now and let him speak a little bit about his background. So welcome, Louis.
Louis, it's a pleasure. And I admire all the work you're doing, by the way. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you said it all, right? I started years ago. I mean, I started with being my dad's financial planner. In fact, we had our first multi-family office in Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles. Didn't realize that when you're 11 years old, you're helping your dad with everything when he starts a business because you're the eldest and speak English, right? Yeah. And little did you know that later back you say, hey, I was a multifamily office before I even knew what it was. And made it out of the barrio, went to some of the best schools in the country, went in financial planning. And at least I'll tell you that I went in financial planning back in the early 80s and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I left financial planning because I got a bad taste. It was really product driven. I wanted to help out my community, and I was taught in financial planning that you should save 6 months, emergency reserves. If you need insurance, you don't have a lot of money, get term policy, do the right things. And the firm that I worked with was a big firm and would tell me, well, maybe a cash value policy might be best things for both of you. Maybe an annuity would be better. Maybe, and I just kind of was disenfranchised or really upset about how the industry worked. I left. Went to go get a CPA license out in Newport Beach, California, a big firm. And little did I know that I was the first financial planner at that firm of 300 CPAs, a firm called Kenneth Leventhal, which is now Ernst & Young. Oh, wow. Out of Orange County, California, and was doing financial planning for multimillionaires and billionaires. And then, tragedy struck in 1990. Where I was also raised in East LA by my grandmother. The reason I made it out of the body was because I love books. And if anybody's seen us on YouTube or whatever, you'll see that I have, thousands of books. I read 100 books a year. Been doing that for 30 years.
That's amazing.
And I got that habit from my uncle, who was a meat cutter, a carnicero in East LA, who was my grandmother's eldest son. And then in 1990, my grandmother passes away unexpectedly. I fly in and do the eulogy. My uncle commits suicide a month later. And then my daughter's born on September 8th, 1990. And on September 8th, 1990, I stopped off at a coffee shop. I went home to go pick up something for my wife at the hospital, stopped off at a coffee shop, met a guy at the coffee shop who literally just changed my life. Went back to the hospital. My parents showed up a couple hours later, held my daughter, and I told my dad I was going to quit my job at Kenneth Leventhal. I'm going to go back to the barrio in East LA and open up a financial planning firm and provide financial literacy. Luis, you're too young to know this. Back then, there was no internet. Latinos were 67% unbanked. They were not using bank accounts, no savings, no checking accounts. And we had the belief that financial literacy was the answer. And I went back and I soon realized that financial literacy wasn't the answer. It was financial mindset that our community had. When you're poor, you don't know that you're poor. Then you leave your community and then end up, fortunately, into a really successful community where everybody's making a lot of money. And you kind of, through osmosis, or I don't know what, you gather that mindset. And then I went back to East LA and I realized that no amount of financial literacy would help our community. And I will tell you that I've been proven correctly. Now, let's go back 30 something years later. And now there's more financial literacy that we'd ever use, right? I mean, seriously, all you have to just Google any topic and you'll have it. Now the wealth gap is wider. People are poor and the communities that are still struggling. And so it's the mindset. So what I did is I started writing books about the mindset. And I've written 5 books on to empower underserved communities, Latinos especially, and African Americans, and also about small business. And that's how a lot of the people that I work with now that are doing financially well, a lot of them are self-employed, right? They're their own business owners, own entrepreneurs from communities that have worked really hard. So that's what I'm doing now. And now I have so I just co-founded with Daniel Guillen, International Private Wealth Advisors, another RIA firm. And then I have Business Management Lab, and we're business managers to some of the most iconic Latino entertainers in the world. And then I have a tax group called US Latin Tax Group, which will work with a lot of entrepreneurs from Latin America that are working here in the United States, or people here in the United States doing a lot of work with in Latin America.
Gotcha. When do you sleep, man?
I'll tell you what, Luis, it's, I've done a lot of business coaching, or I've had a lot of business coaching. And believe it or not, I get all this done in about 45, 50 hours a week. I've learned to figure out how to create a business, right? Just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you know how to run a business that does something.
Right.
So I've actually I've created business systems. I started years and years ago with a gentleman named Michael Gerber, who wrote a book called The E-Myth Revisited. If you guys haven't read that book, pretty much I think everybody's stolen stuff from that book. Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. And then from there, I did strategic coach and I did a bunch of other coaching programs, and they showed me how to build businesses. And I've been able to do that to our clients as well, as I take the entrepreneurs and go from being self-employed people to actually business owners. And we do that. Also, I've been involved in diversity and inclusion. It's a relatively new topic. It's a really hot topic we've had for the last few years. I've been talking about it for 30-something years. I was the first minority on the national board of the FPA. Not Latino, first minority on the national board of the FPA in 2004. Wow. And then currently I'm the first Latino on the national board for the Certified Financial Planning Board. So diversity and inclusion, and trying to get a lot of young people like you in the industry to help communities that need access to competent, ethical financial advice.
Yeah, you just keep trailblazing, man. Thank you for the young comments, but I am old enough to remember not having internet or texting and flip phones. So even even before cell phones came out, actually, at least them being prominently used. But I remember I came to the U.S. in 1991 from Dominican Republic, and my parents were unbanked initially. Everything that they transacted financially was done at the check cashing place. So I remember they used to get their checks, go to the check cashing place, pay like $4 for the privilege of cashing that check. And then they pay their light bill, the electric, the gas. They went to the post office to get money orders. Sometimes, it was something that then was passed down to me. And I remember when I got my first real job, I too was just getting my check and going to cash it and buying money orders, until I learned that there was a better way. And I was able to then help them and say, look, you're paying all these fees. If you have a bank account and you get your direct deposit, you don't have to pay these fees to cash your check. You're losing like $4 every week, each of you. Plus there were transaction fees to pay for their cell phone bills. And there was always a cost, right? So it was actually more expensive to be unbanked. It was crazy. I'm just amazed about how you made it work, because you made the distinction of being not only a great financial planner, but also a great business owner. And I feel like that is a challenge for a lot of people. I'm sure for a lot of your clients as well.
I changed also the way people, I changed also the way we did financial planning, right? So right now, if a couple meet with a financial planner to talk about education planning for their kids, the first thing they're talking about, well, what school do they want to go to? How old are they? How far apart? How much money they're going to need? And you're accumulating money. And then you're talking to them about a 529 plan, the advantages and disadvantages, and how they're going to save in that. I was working in a community where there was over 60% dropout rates in the high school. And that didn't include the kids that were dropping out in junior high.
Wow.
And only 3% were going to community colleges, and very few were actually going even finishing college. So when we did financial planning, and I actually still do in these communities, I have the parents when they schedule their appointment, they have to bring the children's report card. We give them a self-esteem assessment test that they have to accomplish. We get a letter from their English and math teacher that they have to get from their English and math teacher that come in and say where they stand in their class. And so the thing is that I need the kids to have the knowledge, ability, skills, and habits to graduate. And I don't know about you, but my parents didn't give me a nickel for college, right? And I don't know how much they paid for your college, but I did it through loans and work and
becoming
a resident assistant. I have. There you go. And all the friends that I had that are Latinos that have graduated and doing well now basically paid for school. They didn't have parents that did any kind of education planning, but they had already some kind of internal gift already, gene that they were going to graduate. But the problem is that we were using money to save for the future where the kid had no future. And if I can find out if the kids had D's or C's, then I'm going to take some of that money that were going to give me for a 529 plan. I was going to use it for college, for tutoring and becoming better math students or English students. We were actually, sometimes the family dynamics were not good. So we would use it for family counseling. Money was better used than any kind of 529 plan they could ever have, because that gave them the tools to be able to get in and graduate. Because at the end of the day, when I would ask the parents, what do you see? Parents never got to college. My dad graduated from the 6th grade in Mexico. My mom, I think, dropped out when she got pregnant with me at age 15, I think in junior high or just had entered high school. And so it was really important that we saw where the kid was and how we can use money for the highest and best use, right? What you learn in college about finance, the money should be used for best use. And the same thing was when I meet with Latino couples now, the very first question we ask is now, like, for retirement planning. Well, what are you doing? How much are you putting away in your 401k? Bring your bank statements. We give them a marriage count. Basically, it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is marriage, and where is your marriage on that scale? Because if they tell me most women will tell me, where do you have to be to contemplate divorce? They'll say, well, level 3, and they're almost there. And so we'll use some of that money for marriage counseling, believe it or not.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I go back to. So the thing is that you have to go back and take a look at money in certain communities and see, what are we trying to accomplish? Money doesn't solve sometimes certain issues. I mean, saving money, the industry has taught us how to sell a product or put money into a product. When in reality, if we just kind of get out of our own way, it's what do we need to do to become successful? That's what I've done with a lot of the business owners. Instead of talking to them about a 401k retirement plan, I said, maybe we need to take some money and invest it in some coaching, business coaching, to teach you how to go from being self-employed to being a business owner. Otherwise, you'll never scale, you'll never grow, you're never going to make money. And then you'll reach a ceiling of complex and you'll get stuck. And so, and that's how we look at money. That's how our firm looks at money. Obviously, we do everything. I can provide any product that you'd like, but the product is just a tool, right? We really have to do coaching before.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because I've seen that even in my own business, right? I have a solo practice and I have an assistant, but ultimately I'm the only advisor at my firm. And there is such a big difference between being self-employed and being a business owner. A lot of us didn't know what we were signing up for when we decided to become self-employed. Some people think, oh, it's great. Yes, you make your own hours and this and that. But the entrepreneurial side, it's a lot of work, man. You got to be the bookkeeper, the compliance person, the marketer. There's a lot that goes into. So you got to develop certain skill sets and then surround yourself with people as well. So I want to ask you, I know you work with your wife, Angie, on one of the businesses. So tell me a little bit about that. Just how's that dynamic? And,
Yeah, so the biggest business I have is called Business Management Lab. Lab stands for Louis Angie Barajas, right? We have over 20-something employees. And it started really interesting, Luis. I did a commercial for Hyundai years ago, 2 decades ago. In that commercial, there was an actress who was a Latina, and I did it in Spanish. And she became great friends. She's now like my sister, by the way. And her husband happened to work for Sony Music near Sarusi and ends up becoming the president of Sony Music Latin.
Oh, wow.
Years later. And then, he actually starts introducing us because he thought that because we had done work for them and been honest and ethical and transparent, he had seen problems with other business managers, especially working with Latinos. So he asked us if we knew business management, and he actually guided us because business management in the music space is really, really complex and hard to break through. But he trusted us so much, he helped both of us. And my wife had been an accountant and HR director for a couple of years. And that's how we got started. So we actually literally work side by side, 24/7, all the time. I mean,
Wow.
if Angie's never with me at an event, people get worried, like, where's Angie? Like, are you guys okay?
That's awesome.
Side to now over 20 something employees. We've been on Billboard's top managers list for 6 years in a row now. First Latinos to show up there. So
that's amazing. Well, congratulations.
It's an interesting company.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Now let's shift gears to one of your newest ventures, which is you're doing a life-changing television show on PBS called Opportunity Knocks, alongside other coaches like Gene Chatsky and Patrice Washington. So tell me, how did that show come about? How did you get involved? What's the meat and bones of it?
Yeah. So, years ago, I was really involved in diversity and inclusion, and I was out there speaking nationally and done a lot of work. And then about 2008, 2009, when we had the Great Recession, everything just stopped for me. I mean, all the big companies that used to sponsor me stopped sponsoring me. Basically, their budgets were cut. And so for years, I mean, I've written another book that launches next year, but it'd been kind of quiet. And I hadn't been looking at it because my businesses were growing really fast and I was spending time. And all of a sudden, about a year ago, started getting phone calls from a lot of these big companies that had been sponsoring me in the past. I started getting a lot of media attention. CNBC put me on the advisory council, started doing a lot of CNBC. And then I got a call out of the blue from a lady named Lisa Tanner and Jamie Strayer. And they said, hey, listen, we've done a national search. We're doing a show called Opportunity Knocks on PBS. And we've done this national search. We have Gene Chatsky. And obviously, I knew who Gene Chatsky was. And if most people don't know who Gene Chatsky is, Google her. You've seen her 1,000 times. She's been on NBC's Today Show, was on the show for like 20-something years. And Patrice Washington, hadn't heard of Patrice, but I looked her up and, she seemed fantastic. And I said, we're looking for Latino representation. And we've done this national search and we think you're perfect. Would you like to do it? And at first I said, I don't know if I want to do it, but I'll share with you one story. Luis, what happened was that we have 6 couples that we work with, and each has 2 couples. One of the people that I work with is Patricia Reyes. And I think that if you've seen a little bit of the show, you'll know who she is. But
yeah.
So remember that I told you earlier that my grandmother also helped raise me? Okay. Mm-hmm. And her name is Socorro. But when they told me that I would be working with Patricia Reyes, they says, where does she live? And she goes, she lives in El Paso, Texas. But in reality, it's not El Paso. It's a small town called Socorro, Texas.
Oh, wow.
And so I got chills when they told me that she lives in Socorro, Texas. And in my heart, everything that I've ever done has always been in honor of my grandmother. That's why I said, when I built my financial planning firm, my grandmother who came here was 4'9", by the way, just so you know. 4'9", little tiny lady, right? But the love of my life, right? And everything that I've done is I said, if I put my hands in any with any financial planner, who would it be? So I said, I'm going to build a firm that I know that I would, with my eyes closed, that my grandmother could be there. It's the same thing, like, do I send her with Luis or I send her, what would the firm look like? That's what I built out. So when they told me that it was Socorro, Texas, and I've done everything for my North Star, which is my grandmother, Socorro Medina, gave me chills. And I said, I'm in. And it's turned out to be a great experience. It just launched the month of November. And it's on PBS and it's all over the country now. And the easiest thing to do is just to go on the opportunityknocks.net website. And you can actually see the things there, or you can get PBS Passport and stream the show.
Gotcha. Okay, so I know that the basic concept is all 3 of you coaches, you each get 2 couples to work with. I know Patricia that you mentioned, from what I saw, looks like she was 10 months behind on her mortgage, recently divorced, had an accident. And she was, 6 kids, right? About to lose her home, no heat, no hot water. And I'm like, when I'm first looking at it, I'm like, wow, like that's That's a tough climb, and it was just amazing to see you work because you kind of open her eyes to resources, not only outside, right, but also within. I saw you like put in the human element to it, and you were touring her home, and then you noticed that she was a painter, right? So you started asking her about the art, and it was just amazing to me, So I'm excited to continue to watch to see the transformation from when you first.
It'll be amazing. It'll surprise you. Yeah, it'll surprise you. The other thing that you left out is that this whole thing happened to her. The downfall came when during COVID. So she taught art classes in her home, and that's how she was making some money just to survive. And then during COVID, everything shut down, and there were no more art classes that she could do, and she didn't have any access to internet and couldn't teach classes online.
Oh, wow.
And that's when it all spiraled. So that's where it all, and all of a sudden they had no running water. One winter they had to move. It got so cold. They had 3 little casitas that they could rent out. So she had like a little ranch, right? And one of the casitas was empty, and they had to get out of their home and move to the casita. It still didn't have any heat, but because it was smaller, and there's 7 of them actually. The 6 of them, they could be warmer together, if you can imagine.
Wow.
And she's and Luis, she's an amazing person. She's just this really unique. When you're with her, you sense a certain light, like certain vibrational energy, but she was so overwhelmed, and she was just trying to be as brave as possible. Like there's a saying that they say that most Henry David Thoreau said this: most men lead lives of quiet desperation, right? And I've changed it to say that most people, I removed the men part, so it's all of us included. Most people live lives of quiet financial desperation. And I will share with you that in a lot of locations, there are a lot of people who are living lives of quiet financial. That's what she did. All that stress, all that worry, she just put it in because she didn't want to worry her kids. And so when we got there, I will share with you what you did not see on screen is that her and I actually just like one time we just cried involved. I mean, because there was so much stress, and I was such an overwhelmed. We hugged each other. I mean, we bawled, and we were just really crying, and it was very healing. But after that, I said we got to get to work, and the show's going to show people though how not Louis Barajas or Patrice Washington or Gene Chasky are so good that they're going to change their lives. It's going to show them how. We're not going to teach them how to fish. We're going to show them how to fish. And it's going to show them resources that anybody out there who's listening to us today or who watches the show can use to overcome and get out of the situation that they're currently in.
Yeah, I love that concept of empowering people. I caught on to that because at first, when you first met her, and you got a chance to see what her situation was. I remember you said, it seems like the only thing you have left is your children, right? At this point. And then you kind of said, I'm not going to do everything for you. I'm going to teach you how to do it. And I like the fact that you were using the concept of using the vision, starting with the end in mind, and then say, okay, we're going to get to work now backwards. How do we get there today from where we are? And I felt like that was so powerful because you were right. You were like, when I leave, if I do everything for you, then you're back to square one. So I love that concept.
The other thing is you got to give people hope. Yeah, you got to give people hope. Yeah, there's just saying that I've always said, the why bother serenade, the why bother if I'm going to be poor, why bother if I'm not smart enough, why bother, right? At some point, the light in front of you has to be stronger than the light behind you. It can't be darker in front of you. And so it's you actually, when you working with any client, I make sure that they paint a picture that's much brighter and lighter for the future. So we work towards that. And that's kind of helps them get out of depression or whatever. And that's really, really important that you do that. The other thing that I use that I didn't use there is when I meet with clients, I have a puzzle box in my office. It's a 1,000-piece puzzle box. It's like little tiny pieces. And I've covered the puzzle box with white paper. So you can't see the pictures. And I say, listen, I open up the puzzle box and I grab a handful. These are your kids, and this is your 401k, and this is your insurance, and this is your estate plan, and it's all over the desk, a whole bunch of stuff. Now you're going to hire me to put this puzzle together. Well, how do I know? It's going to take me forever because I don't have a picture on the puzzle box. So I need you to spend at least 2 or 3 sessions with me, really clarifying how I'm putting these pieces together for you, because your picture will be completely different than anybody else's.
Mhm.
But if you can spend just a short time, and that's where I find that a lot of financial planners don't spend time on that. They get right to you need an estate plan, and we're going to get you the wills, the trust, the durable power of attorney, healthcare director, nomination, and guardian.
Yeah.
And then we got to get the 401k. And let's just take a look at which portfolio we're going to select, whether we're going to go 60, 40, 70, 30, how much in international, how much is, in US. And at the end of the day, I've always said I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? No one's going to take anything with them. Money is just a tool to live a better quality of life. But the problem is most people don't spend any time clarifying what that life is supposed to look like when it's finally said and done. So that was the approach that I used with Patricia, is what does you want your life to look like? Now, in the meantime, we have urgent things to do. There's no running water there, dude. We had to get our loan to refinance a house, to be able to hire plumbers to take care of that. So you'll see that through the CDFIs, and I'll explain to you what that is in a little bit.
Yeah.
How we got her resources, how we got her job, how we, get her back and thinking about how to be more entrepreneurial and how to create more money, which is another thing. When most people work with poor people, the first thing they want to do is do a budget. Like if there's much money left over on a budget, we teach them how to make more money instead of focusing on how to spend less. No, how do you make more and how do you become more valuable?
I like that. Yeah, no, it's amazing because you're not throwing the book at them. Even going back to when you were first describing how you work with some clients, thinking about, hey, listen, this 529 money is better spent in tutoring or family counseling. I mean, that's unheard of, right? You walk into a bank, there's no way. Just because the person there, they work for the bank, right? And they have a certain quota to meet. And like you said, it initially very product focused and either selling you something or showing you how to put money into something, right? As opposed to looking at just like that holistic. So that's amazing. So, I think that's just genius.
The other thing is that there's a lot of people that's doing the work that I'm doing, right? Because they've read a lot of my books and kind of doing that work. But my goal right now is how to have people who really want to do that kind of work and do it ethically and honestly, but also how sustainable. Because again, the industry is made for people to sell picks, and if you're taking up a cubicle space at a big, broker dealer, if you're not creating a certain amount of revenue, it's at the end of the day, it's just business, right? It has nothing to do with just business.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's business, but it's doing good and doing well at the same time. And we have to become sustainable. So that's the other part. There's a lot of people that want to do the work that I've done. I've learned the hard way, right? It was very complicated when I first started 30 something years ago. And to be honest with you, I don't even know how the hell I made it, to be put on how I this far. And then it just happens where the clients keep getting bigger. Your clients, the ones that started in the barrio, that, I had clients that never made more than 40,000 and I have close to $1 million with us. But it was, 30 years later, it wasn't quick, get rich quick schemes for these clients.
Yeah, no, for sure. You grew with them. And tell me a bit about, I'm going to share the links to the show and everything, but tell us about some of the resources. Like, what is a community development financial institution, a CDFI?
Yeah, so basically, it's a bank or a credit union that's been accredited by the government to actually get resources, right? I mean, like B of A can give money to some of these organizations, and they're targeted in these community banks, credit unions, banks that are in lower income areas, and they're there to support and help people buy homes, refinance debt. People who wouldn't have the best credit in the world, they're there to make sure that people don't go into poverty, and they're not aware of that. And so the problem is that, I'm going to be quite honest with you, I've been doing this kind of work for a whole bunch of years. I hadn't heard of CDFI until I did this show. I don't know if you knew about CDFIs before this, but I hadn't heard of CDFIs. And what it is that we found out through the show that like Patricia, who had, horrific credit, was still able to refinance her house. I mean, I think her interest rate was in the double digits on her home. Believe it or not, we got to refinance to a low interest rate. So CDFIs, and so where do you find them? So what we did is through the show Opportunity Knocks, we created a link. I think it's like midway on the left-hand side, called the Opportunity Finder. And you'll go on there, you'll put your zip code, or you put a link test to like the zip code and what do you need help on? Debt consolidation, buying a house, whatever. And it will send you to a CDFI bank or credit union or community bank in your neighborhood, anywhere. So it's not something you're using across the country. It's something in your own neighborhood that you didn't know that sometimes was, 5 miles away from you. And that's what we did for Patricia. Literally everything for her, all her help was like 5 miles away from her.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and so that's all we wanted to show people. Like we've got people that if you need small business help, well, we connected them to the SBDCs, right? The Small Business Development Corporations, basically run by the SBA, where you get free business advice as well. Business, retired business people. So most people don't know where to look for it. So we figured, what if we can consolidate it? What if we can just show people that there's a place that they can just go to one place and start looking for help? And these are people that would never walk into a financial planner's office. Patricia would have never been one of your clients. There's nothing you could have done to really help her, and you would have had to bill her per hour, and she wouldn't have been able to pay you, right? And so again, there's a tremendous amount of people out there that the financial planning industry is never going to help. Isn't going to be around, at least on the financial planning side. But we still got to give them access, and we still need to show them resources. At my firm, we have a term called "turn the turtle." And that's, let's say you and I are working together and we're walking down the street and we see a turtle upside down like this, basically with its little feet, and it's upside down. That turtle ain't going to turn over, right? So you and I don't walk past that turtle. We stop, we bend down, we pick up the turtle, turn it over, and then put it in the right direction. And that's what our firm has always been doing, is that, they always talk about pro bono work. I've done, I think, more pro bono work than anybody because we've got a big team and we get calls weekly, I need your help. And there's nothing really that our firm can't help. We really sometimes can't help them, take them on as clients, but we need to have resources available for these people. And that's what we've done. And through this Opportunity Finders made it much easier for us. So we take the phone calls, help them, guide them, put them on the right path when they're lost. And so to me, helping people who've never had access, like my parents or my grandparents, has been the driving force in my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, I find that some of the stuff that you've shared, there's been like some like divine intervention, like on some things, like, going to get coffee and then meeting that guy who just changed your life going forward. And I feel like opportunity then knocked on your door when it came to the show too, because as busy as you are, you can't help everybody. But I think now at least you're helping show people that there is hope. And now through the show, you can expand and multiply that help that you can provide, and then just how it was town.
My thing, I've got to, Luis, but I've got to know you. I feel you have the same heart. And so the thing is that at the end of the day, I think that what happens is that if you believe in God or the universe or whatever, I think that synchronistically, he'll put people right in your path, sometimes right in front of you. We don't even know it. The gentleman that I met at the coffee shop wrote a book like 8-9 years later. And I wrote a book called 8-9 Years Later. And we met again in New York City because we both wrote a book for HarperCollins.
Okay.
I did it through the imprint called Rayo. He did it through the Christian imprint. It's a guy named Rick Warren who wrote a book called A Purpose-Driven Life. Wow. He spoke to me at the coffee shop about a purpose-driven life a decade before he even wrote a book with that title.
Wow.
And that's what Warren is. Rick Warren did the invocation or the prayer for Barack Obama's first inauguration. Wow. And when I met him, he had a church in Orange County, California called Saddleback. But back then it was under a tent and it was dirt floors. And now it's one of the biggest mega churches in the country, right? I think he just recently has retired now. So yeah, a synchronistic event is I do a commercial and the lady who's the actress ends up being married to the guy, for Sony Music. Synchronistic. When I went back to the barrio, I got a lot of press. Somebody was in East LA having lunch with his mother. He's reading the newspaper, the LA Times article about me. He comes up to my office and says, "Listen, I'll be back in 3 months. I live in San Diego, but I grew up in Boyle Heights. I want to support you."
Wow.
His wife ends up being married, is the executive assistant to Anthony Robbins.
Oh, wow.
Anthony Robbins invites me. Anthony Robbins, she says, "Hey, my boss read the article and wants to invite you to this conference." And now I go, "Oh man, I can't afford. I'm back in the bottom helping the poor. I don't have money now." I told my wife, "I'm not going to tip the family money." And he goes, "No, we're going to pay for it all. you're going to room with a gentleman, and the gentleman that I roomed with, this is back in 1994, was David Bach. David Bach, who's been on Oprah, but he wrote Smart Women Finish Rich, Smart Couples Finish Rich, Automatic Millionaire, and a whole bunch of other books.
Wow.
And he was writing his very first book, and I was thinking about writing my first book, and he introduced me to his agent who helped me get the book sold. So talk about synchronistic events, and they continue. The Socorro story that I just told you about my grandmother being Socorro, and the very first person that come back and redo this work lives in Socorro. And you just gotta have to stay open to those miracles in your life. And I think most people have those, but you got to stay open to receive that information. I think that God puts in your way, and then God's been really good. I've had people in my life that He's removed from me that have been very painful. But He's removed from me that I didn't think that I could continue moving forward. And every time He removes them, I just flourish. It's like I grow even more. So there's been a lot of, trust me, it has not been easy. People see me and they go, oh, look, he's working with, Nicky Jam, or he's working with this person or whatever. And I go, no, it hasn't been easy to get to this point, but I've been very fortunate and very blessed.
It took years just doing that grind. Yeah, like you said with your client, 30 years later, now they have $1 million and they were making 40,000, but it wasn't overnight. Yeah, you're not an overnight success. You've been at this for decades.
That's it.
And continue to do so, man, which is amazing. You've definitely been very impactful to us, younger Latino professionals in the financial planning industry that have come behind you, man. And, I appreciate you initially taking the time as well to speak with me. And I think I just reached out on like LinkedIn or something, and you were like, yeah, let's hop on the phone, and you gave me some career advice, which I took, and a lot better for it, man. So I appreciate that. So what's next for Louis Barajas?
We're building, I think I don't know if I had mentioned to you that we got kind of tired of working with clients that were underserved and where they needed insurance, but somebody was trying to sell them some kind of IUL policy or some cash value policy. So for the first year in, God knows, like 20 something years, we created our own insurance agency this year. International Private Wealth Advisors is a brand new firm that I created. I want to go out and help the Latino community. I'm bringing in Latino advisors for that. What's next? We're going to do a second season of Opportunity Knocks. I'm praying that we can even get moved to, I think they're talking to Netflix. That might work, but there's just a lot of stuff going on right now. And what's next is really just staying in our lane, trying to help people who need help, and try to do the most honest, ethical, competent work that we possibly can, and just do the mission that I've had for 30 something years.
That's amazing. And you said there's another book dropping soon as well?
There is a book I finished up, and it's called The Go Better Entrepreneur instead of The Go Getter. The Go Better Entrepreneur. And it shows a lot of people who have, they say, well, how do you do all the stuff that you do and you get it done like within 40, 50 hours? I said,
yeah, that's impressive.
Because I created systems, right? I created a business out of it, and I know how to create business. So instead of working harder, which creates more stress, you're less healthy, more divorces, right? Entrepreneurs have the highest divorce rate next to entertainers, I guess. And so we're trying to figure out how to go back and restructure your business to give you more life, right? Because the purpose of a business is to give you more life, not to suck the life out of you. And a lot of entrepreneurs are out there on their own, and they're just struggling, man. And they've got kids and families, and it's just hard. And Latinos normally tend to put, when we go through a values conversation, they put family first, and family requires time. So we try to show them how to do that. So that book launches. I'm bringing in a co-writer who's going to bring this a gentleman named Matt Sapala, who just finished writing a book called The Faith-Based Millionaire. And he will be joining me on that book. And we're right now adding a lot of his flavor to my book. And we should be launching in the first quarter of 2023.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah, so you start in 2023 with a bang.
We're working hard.
That's amazing. I have one more question I want to ask you. But before I let you go, can you share with us where you live on social media? Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, Lab, and everything you're doing?
Yeah. I don't, if they want to find about Lab, it's labarajas.com. If they want to find about International Private Wealth Advisor, we're launching actually our website soon, and it'll be ipwadvisors.com. And then everything's Louis Barajas, LOUISBARAJAS.com, whether it's Facebook, Twitter. I think I'm more active in LinkedIn now. I don't know why. It seems like I've got a really strong business to business community, and I've got, I think, 8,000 LinkedIn friends.
Nice.
on my LinkedIn. So we
That's
post
huge.
a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, well, trust me, he's not hard to find if you look him up. But I will be providing links to all of the social media, the website for the show, and his business as well, if you guys are interested in following him or getting in touch. So, Louis, I always ask my guests, if you are in an elevator with somebody and you're never going to see them again, they don't know who you are, it's going to be a short ride from the first floor to the 10th floor, whatever. Well, what are some things that you would just want that person to know? It doesn't have to be about money. It could be something you learn about life, some insight, some wisdom that you just want to pass on. Be like, hey, man, if you take anything out of this, here's what I got.
Yeah, I guess I always say, that the people you love the most are your children. And I constantly tell my kids, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? Don't do stuff for money. Money, especially in the industry that we're in, money is a tool, but money doesn't make you happier. Once you have a certain amount of money, honestly, I think Jim Carrey once said that I wish everyone had the opportunity to become as famous as I've been and make as much money as I have, so they can know that money is not the answer, right? Money and fame are not the answer. And so I would love for that person to know to just stay true to their passion, their calling, do what they were put on earth to do, know what their unique abilities are. And that's it, right? It's I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. I live with that. There's another thing that I'll talk to you maybe later about. I use a formula called E plus R equals O. The events that happen in your life plus how you either respond or react will determine your outcome. And I live by that formula, believe it or not. And when I have that formula right in front of me right now, in front of my computer screen, and whenever I have any kind of difficulties, I go back to that formula, and I've torn that formula down to help me live a better life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was just talking to a client about something similar yesterday. Well, we were talking about her history with money, and she was saying that in the place where she lived, there's a lot of people that seem to have a lot of money and live this lavish lifestyle, and she kind of felt a little bit like, man, like, what am I doing wrong, kind of thing. And I was just telling her that a lot of the times when you see that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're successful. It's tied sometimes to the mindset. And a lot of the times you have people that went through the very same exact set of circumstances, and they choose a different path, because one of them might say, some of those people might have never had any of that stuff growing up. And they chose to, hey, now that I'm making good money, I'm just going to live in the moment, and I'm going to buy the bigger car and take trips. They may still be living paycheck to paycheck. They're just doing it in a more lavish manner, right? And then some people look at that and say, oh, I never had this growing up. I don't want to retire the way my parents did or struggle. So I'm actually going to go about it the other way, right? And be super diligent with saving and also intentional with their money. So it's pretty interesting. I love that formula. Yeah. So I think we're gonna have to have you back, man, when the book comes out. And
Absolutely, we'll share more. See what else you're teaching your clients as well. Look, at the end of the day, I think that you and I want really what's best, right? We've I think shown in our careers that products are just tools for implementation, but at the end of the day, you've got to really think through and talk through and understand and know what is that you really want to accomplish when it's your last day on earth. Because I've always said, 100 years from now or 80 years from now, none of us are going to be here. Yeah. Everybody who's listening to me 100 years from now, none of us will be here on earth. And so what kind of legacy, what kind of impact, what kind of significance did we leave? And did we leave the place a little better? Also, I just want to make sure that people understand that sometimes the financial planning industry teaches fear, right? And it's very fear-based. You're going to end up broke, and you're going to end up poor, and you're going to end up, living out in the streets. And if you don't save enough and whatever, we've all had our abuelitas have a lot, and, still died happy, still had, what they needed. We have to make sure that we're living in love and not in fear as we continue moving forward. Life is hard enough, man. And at the end of the day, I just think that we all still need to go out and help out. When you call me, when anybody calls me, I always answer, because I had people who helped me, right? And I always want to make sure that we have a hand up and help each other out, because it's good karma. It's actually good karma when you do good things. So
yeah, absolutely.
Good karma.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Louis, for taking the time to speak with us in the middle of, launching your new business, writing another book, and everything you got going on.
My pleasure for sure.
So I appreciate it. So I look forward to continuing to see the rest of the episodes. Opportunity knocks. So everybody just go to the show notes so you get the links. So you learn how to access the show. Thank you so much, Louis. Happy holidays to you and your family. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you so much, Luis.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Be on the lookout for newer episodes towards the end of the year. And wishing you and your family happy holidays. And as always, if you have a question, send me an email, luis@onmywaytowealth.com. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.